All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here with Drew Dinsick, coming in from an undisclosed location. Color-coded today, all wearing navy in honor of the Navy Blues. Carlton back home in the AFL on a massive winning streak at the moment. Drew really vaulted into premiership consideration, so they're going to have to do it from outside the top four. So we'll leave the Blues to another day. Let's talk about the NFL preseason before we get into OROY and James Harden. But ask you two questions about the preseason. First one is, did anything happen over the weekend that changed your opinion about betting the preseason, this preseason in particular? Any big takeaways?
Well, I thought we were in black and blues because I feel black and blue from the way that the preseason betting went for me this weekend. Had some absolutely hellacious beats. The Miami Dolphins not getting more than 3 points in that game was mind-blowing. They had like 400 yards of offense, and they end up with 3 points. But nothing really topped the Arizona Cardinals scoring the garbage time touchdown and then getting the garbage time two-pointer to bust all of the Broncos CLV, all of the Broncos teaser legs. So that was kind of brutal. But in general, I probably should have taken the weekend off. I think realistically the information was good. Nothing was like abjectly wrong. But I think it's going to take a little bit of creativity to find winning plays for week 2. And then I'm definitely going to take week 3 off.
Yep, we will preview week 2 when we're a bit closer to the weekend. Second question for you about the slate. Was there anything that happened that changes your mind about any teams going into the season? I think that the conventional wisdom about preseason in general is that if you look good, to take it with something of a grain of salt, but if you look bad, that's quite a bad sign. So I'd be a little bit worried for Trey Lance, for instance, who did not look great, and players of that ilk. But any takeaways that you can apply to the regular season?
My general macro opinion of offenses, offensive coordinators, young quarterbacks leading to uneven football through the first quarter of the season is solidifying. I think the Anthony Richardson experience is going to have its ups and downs. The Bryce Young experience might have its ups and downs. CJ Stroud similarly. Offensive line play certainly mattered a ton. I think the San Francisco 49ers offensive line was really not in the state that I expected. Similarly, the Patriots. And in general, if you didn't have any kind of blocking, then you were in deep trouble trying to get young players and new offenses to look good in the preseason. So I think in general, you're going to have to pick your spots to find unders early on here, as we have just so much change, so much turnover at the quarterback and offensive coordinator positions across the league right now.
Yep. I think to me, one of the bigger takeaways was the Bears just solidifying themselves as everyone's preseason darling, and Justin Fields only attempted and completed 3 passes, one of them pretty deep, with the screen pass going long. And I think that the Bears, everyone's focusing on their skill position additions, the fact that it's DJ Moore in and full year of Chase Claypool, and they made some big name additions on defense as well. But I think the big thing with the Bears is just, for the first time since Rex Grossman was around, that they've got a really solid offensive line, at least on paper. Jay Cutler never had a good offensive line in Chicago, I don't think. And I do think that offense has the chance to be potentially dominant if Fields can improve his accuracy a little bit in the passing game. I think on defense is where they're going to have their issues with D-line and corner, but they are going to be a fun team, and I think a team that's going to be pretty conducive to high-scoring games over the course of the season. All right, we'll segue into Offensive Rookie of the Year. But before that, a reminder that with the NFL season quickly approaching, now is the perfect time to get your RotoWorld Fantasy Football Draft Guide. Get ready for your draft and stay one step ahead of your league during the preseason with updated player rankings, profiles, projections, mock drafts, and more. Go to NBCSports.com/draft guide and use code DRAFT2023 to save 20% at checkout. Also a note on the preseason, we've got multiple week 2 preseason lines in the 40s with their totals after overs went 7-1 last weekend. Okay, NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year. This is Bijan Robinson's market. He's plus 250. Bryce Young plus 450. Anthony Richardson 7-1, narrowly in front of Jahmyr Gibbs and CJ Stroud. And then you get into all the receivers: Jackson Smith and Jigba, Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers, and Quentin Johnston in that order. My thought here is that the Bijan is going like 8th in fantasy drafts. And we've talked about this, but I think fantasy is fantasy, there is so much attention placed upon it that it's a relatively efficient market at predicting just skill player statistical production. That's why, to me, it made no sense that Breece Hall was 22-1 to an offensive rookie of the year going into last season, but was the number one player being taken off the board in fantasy. And I think, again, the fact that Bijan is going so high in drafts, and, with good reason, he's in the best possible position that he could have been. I think if you're going to choose a team for him to get drafted just to produce statistically this season, it might have been the Falcons, just with their commitment to running the ball, with their offensive line, with their questions at quarterback, which should be conducive to Bijan getting a lot of work. How short do you think he should be?
I don't hate plus 250 as a bet, but I think that's about right. My general sense is that betting a quarterback right now is burning money. I think all three quarterbacks who are likely to start the season are going to have their struggles, particularly early on. We just talked about this. And I think if you want to buy low on one of those guys midseason because they could come down the home stretch and win a bunch of winnable games, then that's maybe an approach you want to take to fill out a portfolio. But to start the season, there's really only two guys that I think are going to have the volume and then have the upside. Bijan Robinson, you made the case for. We haven't ever really talked about Jahmyr Gibbs, though. And I think the Lions have an offense in general that can score 30 on any given day. I love the offensive coordinator. I like the balance that they now have, across that, skill position group. And I think realistically, Gibbs, this is narrative-y. This is narrative nonsense potentially. But the fact that they got so much criticism for taking Gibbs when they did kind of makes it, I think, a little bit more likely that the coaching staff, that the kind of the mind hive there proves it, that they did something right in the way that they utilize him. I doubt they are going to be shy with Gibbs. And maybe the only thing I can ding Robinson for is that his backup in Algier is so good that if Robinson has like any kind of limited, any kind of medical issue on any given week, if he's questionable, to me, that maybe means doubtful, because the next guy up is so good and you want to keep Robinson potentially available for a late season push. So I think Gibbs is worth consideration in the plus 750 range. I don't think any of the wide receivers are going to realistically get enough volume to trump any of those guys. So this is a running back award, I think, this year. And maybe you add a quarterback to fill out your portfolio midseason.
Yeah, and I think on Gibbs, the key thing there, which we've talked about, is the fact that the Lions, their schedule in the back half of the season, like their last 10 games, they've got to play outdoors once in 10 games. Outside of that, it's domes, it's retractable roofs, and that one game outdoors is at Chicago, who do not have a great defense. So I think that is going to be huge for Jahmyr Gibbs, who is being talked about as, I guess, one of the most pass catcher capable running backs we've seen come out of the draft, like ever, like in the same, being spoken about in the same breath as Christian McCaffrey with that skill, which is going to help. So yeah, I think Gibbs should be the second favorite in this market behind Bijan. I agree. The way that it goes wrong for Bijan is just the fact that Cordarrelle Patterson is there, Tyler Algier is there. It might be more of a timeshare than you would anticipate. I still think that he will be fine and that he should be a pretty clear favorite in this market. But I have had some people ask me, like, why isn't Bijan just favored against the field? It's just with these type of markets, there's just so much variance in that you're going to have something like Raheem Mostert will get injured, and then all of a sudden Devin Achane is the starting running back for the Dolphins offense, or Kenneth Walker, who is just constantly hurt, he will go down, and then all of a sudden it's the Zach Charbonnet show in Seattle. Like, injuries will happen. Ryan Tannehill could get hurt week one, and then all of a sudden Will Levis is the quarterback. So there's just all of that stuff will come into play. Injuries will create more opportunity for guys. I think the other thing I would say about this market is that historically, if it has been close, the tiebreak goes to the quarterback just because of the importance of position. I mean, that's just a very logical thing. I think back to Justin Herbert beating Justin Jefferson as a pretty good test of concept for that. One thing I will say there, though, is that I think this is now being progressively viewed more as relative to position, and Jamar Chase winning over Mac Jones, I think, was evidence of that, where people just viewed Chase where he was in the wide receiver hierarchy. It's just a tier above where Mac Jones was in the quarterback hierarchy. I still would have voted for Mac Jones because I think quarterback is just so much more important, and I think that he should have won. And then last year, I was a bit surprised, honestly, and I misread last year. I thought Brock Purdy would get more attention for OROY because of, again, quarterback position, but in the end, he didn't really come close to sniffing it, where Ken Walker and Garrett Wilson, just because they were there the whole year, even though they had pretty modest statistical lines, that they ultimately lapped him. But is there anything else that you're looking for in OROY?
No, but I had a losing weekend, Jay. We didn't need to bring up Mac Jones, Rookie of the Year, man. That one still stings. I think I had it. That was my biggest futures position that year, and it was in the 10-1 range. And I still can't believe that Chase picked his pocket there right at the tail end of the season. But that just kind of is something you always have to keep in the back of your head, that it's not how you start the season, it's how you finish. And if you have a high profile performance late in the season that really pops, which is the Jahmyr Gibbs potential. Because he's got the higher ceiling in terms of just explosive plays. Then all of a sudden, if you've only staked Bijan Robinson, you might be feeling a little black and blue yourself.
Yeah, listen, Drew, the 2021 NFL season is still the darkest season of my life. I don't think I've ever mentioned this outside of the 55 times that I have, but Jonathan Taylor, 70-1 Offensive Player of the Year. Micah Parsons, 100-1 Defensive Player of the Year. Had them both favorites going into the penultimate weekend of the season, and then both go down. So just to wash that out of my mouth, I'd like to bring up your big losses as well in Mac Jones. We're going to move on to the 76ers and James Harden because you got to get on a flight. But before we do, a reminder, MLB Sunday leadoff heads to Texas, where the Seattle Mariners take on last year's World Series champions, the Houston Astros. Watch these two teams not only battle for position in the AL West, but for the postseason as well. Catch the action live this Sunday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Peacock. That is going to be a good one. I'm going to hit now the 76ers after James Harden. It's quite a thing to wake up to, seeing that tweet and James Harden just going off on Daryl Morey as Drew jockeys for position to board his flight. In terms of how to attack this, in terms of repercussions, I would say that it's pretty unlikely now that James Harden is ever going to play a minute for the 76ers. I know that was the position that was outlined by Daryl Morey, and the Woj reported that they're looking to enter the season with him. I just don't see, given that James Harden is the GOAT at trying to get out of situations, how this ends with him just being happy enough to play out the season on Philadelphia. So I'd move forward with the expectation that he's going to be on a different team and that they'll get some return back that keeps them somewhat in contention and also keeps their books clean for next season, where they will have cap space, presumably. How they're going to go about staying in contention with just Tyrese Maxey alongside Joel Embiid, I'm not too sure, but I think that they can probably get themselves in the range where they're 10-1 fair to win the East and 21 fair to win the title, and then hope that that's good enough that it keeps Joel happy, and then they can get reinforcements in the offseason. I would not be backing the Sixers right now to win the title at 16-1, though. I don't think there's any bet on scenarios with the Sixers at the moment in terms of their team success. The one thing with Philadelphia right now that is interesting from a betting perspective, I think, is the most improved player market with Tyrese Maxey, where if James Harden is no longer there, which seems like it's going to happen, then all of a sudden Tyrese Maxey becomes significantly he becomes very well placed to win that award. I think that he should just about be the favorite for that award. You look at his stats just with Harden off the floor, he's at around his scoring goes up almost 50% or something crazy like that. Goes from, I believe, 18 points per 75 possessions up to over 27 points per 75 possessions with Harden off the floor. So, look, I think that to win, because he's already in pretty good standing, that Maxey will need to increase his playmaking And also the Sixers will need decent team success. I think the past 13 most improved player winners, that 9 of those teams have gone over their win total. And one of the teams that went under was Kevin Love on the Wolves when they won 17 games. So that team had such low expectations that it wasn't necessarily a bad vibes team, even though they only won 17 games. So I think that the Sixers are going to have to win probably upper 40s, 50 games for Maxey to be in the mix there. But I think that is definitely possible. But I do think he's going to have to increase his playmaking, show some skill development that is not just, so it's not just viewed as, oh, Harden's gone, and thus, Maxey is just by default getting more usage. I think he will have to show something. I think he probably can. He averaged over 4 assists 2 years ago, almost by accident when Harden wasn't on the team. So I think that if he can get into the mid-5s assists per game, he can average 26, 27 a game, then that probably makes him the front runner for the award. And I think that the team should be relatively decent even without Harden, just because if you have a healthy Embiid and you have Maxey, I think that you're going to be high 40s anyway. Tobias Harris still around, PJ Tucker's still around. They still have okay enough depth to be competitive. So I think Maxey is probably the best look in terms of betting the Sixers at the moment. Again, he has a kind of a strange most improved player case in that he's already established. He's already had moments in the postseason. He's already a 20 points per game scorer, but he's never made an all-star team. And I think that he will have a fair bit of narrative if he can emerge as the guy who, effectively saves Philadelphia's season after James Harden walked out on his third team in 3 years. Then I think that he will have a case, and that's probably the best method of attack at the moment with the Sixers. All right, Drew's got to go. He's got to board a flight. So we are done for today. We'll be back tomorrow, though. And in the meantime, don't forget to check out NBCSports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks to those watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to rate and subscribe. And also a reminder to find all your favorite NBC Sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. From Jay Croucher and about to be airborne Drew Dinsick. We'll see you tomorrow.